Hey everybody. So I took a little vacation from this nightmarish election cycle that we're having. But I'm back now. The recent Trump revelations have caused me to come out of hibernation. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Donald Trump, the man. So when Michelle Obama last week referred to Donald Trump as a sexual predator, obviously she hit the nail on the head. But the reality is deeper and broader than that. Donald Trump has really been a predator in every aspect of his life for years. And I'd like to talk about what I mean by that. Donald Trump has always struck me as kind of a dumb guy in his inability to read a teleprompter, in his ability to articulate any real policies, or at least policies with any nuance to them, his inability to get his facts straight. But there is one area in which I think Donald Trump is brilliant, and that's his ability to sense immediately who the weak are, who the vulnerable are, who his marks will be, who's exploitable, where he can run roughshod all over them. And I think he's done that in every aspect of his life. Now, I think there are two basic rules that guide Donald Trump's behavior. The first rule is act like a big shot and people will think you're a big shot. So that's why it's so important for him to knock down any ideas that he's not as rich as he seems to be. For example, back in 2011, there was a roast of Trump on the Comedy Channel. And the one thing that Donald Trump insisted on in the preparation for the roast was that there could be no jokes that minimized his wealth, referred to his bankruptcies, or described him as being less wealthy than he claims to be. That was the thing that he safeguarded the most, the perception that he's a multi-billionaire. He realizes that an essential part of his con is to project an absolute image of success that people will identify with and follow. Another example of this is his delusional optimism in the face of all evidence. The other day he told an audience that the race was a dead heat when the polls were showing him 8 points down. Or I've heard him variously say, the blacks are going to support me. I'm going to get the biggest Hispanic vote you've ever seen. Obviously it's not going to happen. But it still manages to inspire confidence in the gullible, vulnerable people who follow him. Now that's rule number one. Rule number two is, once you've established your base of power, once you have power, abuse that power as far as you can, without absolutely going to jail, of course. So let me give you some examples of this disgraceful part of the Trump MO. First of all, the behavior that he has elevated to almost a business model, which is stiffing vendors and subcontractors. Donald Trump simply refuses to pay people. He's aware that many of the subcontractors he uses, painters, florists, welders, chauffeurs, mechanics, these are people who live from project to project, paycheck to paycheck. And once Donald Trump says, I'm not going to pay you, they're in no position to fight him over the next 18 months because they know that they'll lose more money that way than they would have lost for simply accepting Donald Trump's ripoff. And that's one of the saddest parts of the Trump MO. Let me give you some examples of the hundreds of people who he has stiffed over the years. There's a guy named Edward Friel who ran a carpentry company in Atlantic City. The company had been in existence for 30, 40 years. They landed a $400,000 contract at Trump Plaza to do carpentry for Trump. That is, making large registration desks, making stands for slot machines to fit in, making bars, making cabinets, doing the enormous amount of woodworking that goes into a large-scale casino. So they did their work, and they submitted their final bill, which was $83,600. Didn't get paid. Eventually, Friel was called into Donald Trump's office, along with a lot of other subcontractors, and he was told, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to pay you because we thought your work was substandard. Well, there are two problems with this. First of all, in a project like this, there's always a general contractor. The role of the general contractor is to say, we don't think you're using the grain of wood that was specified in the contract. That needs to be redone. Those cabinets weren't done to spec. The coloration here does not fit what we were expecting. So you need to redo that. All of that is the purview of the general contractor. And once the general contractor signs off on the work, and the work is installed in the casino, the subcontractor, Friel and Company, have every reason to expect that they're going to get paid. When Trump says, I'm not going to pay you, I didn't like your work, that's based on nothing. Second of all, Friel reports that Donald Trump said, and by the way, you can work with us in the future. Well, who actually tells a contractor whose work has been flawed that they are willing to work with them in the future? I mean, this is a scam. It's a ripoff. It's Trump realizing, hey, I can get away with stiffing these people, and I will. A second example in which Trump doesn't even try to rationalize the ripoff came with a guy named J. Michael Diehl, who was the owner of the Freehold Music Center in Freehold, New Jersey. Now, his contract called for him to supply the Taj Mahal with quality grand pianos. Not only supply these very expensive pianos, but to maintain them as well. So as he was about to deliver all these pianos to the casino, he noticed in the contract it said that he would be paid within 90 days of delivery. And that's not the normal way that he did business, and made him a little uneasy. And he went to his lawyer and he said, do you think I ought to require my money up front? And the contract called for $100,000 to be paid to his company. The lawyer scoffed, laughed a little bit, and said, man, you're dealing with Donald Trump. I mean, he's so rich. Of course he's good for the money. So Diehl accepted this, did his work, supplied the pianos, and at the end of 90 days, no money had arrived. He called, he wrote, tried to contact Trump, couldn't get his phone calls returned. Finally, he got a letter from the Trump organization telling him money was a little short at the Taj Mahal right now, and they were offering him $70,000. They were going to pay him 70 cents on the dollar. There wasn't any discussion of, we'll pay you this installment now and we'll come back later and give you the rest. It was, we'll pay you 70 cents on the dollar, take it or leave it. Now, this guy wasn't in any position to fight Donald Trump. He bit his lip, took the $70,000, but this payment was going to constitute a significant part of his income for that particular season. The fact that he had been stiffed $30,000 meant that he couldn't have the same number of pianos in his showroom. It meant that he had to slash his advertising budget. And he will tell you today, as he told the Washington Post, it set him back years in terms of the development of his business. And he resents it bitterly. One final example of the Trump ripoff business model came with one of his high-end realtors, Rana Williams, who sold property and buildings in Manhattan. And we can imagine how expensive these properties are that she was dealing with in Manhattan. Between 2009 and 2012, she sold hundreds of millions of dollars of properties. And at the end of the day, in 2012, Trump had stiffed her on commissions to the tune of $735,000. So in this case, when somebody stiffs you $750,000, obviously you're going to file suit in this case. She did, and Trump eventually settled with her. Now, like so many Trump settlements, the terms of the settlement called for confidentiality on her part, so she can't talk about it today. But what she did say in one of her depositions was there was not even any claim that she had done anything wrong or anything was amiss. He simply refused to pay on a whim. Those are her words. It was a matter of whimsy on his part. He thought he could get away with it, so he did it. What about the other examples of establishing a power base and then abusing it? Well, one way you can do that is buy a beauty pageant, Miss Universe, Miss Teen America. Once you have your base of power there, you realize, hey, I'm the owner. I think what I will do is I can walk through the dressing rooms when they're undressing. They're all trying to win the pageant. They all think that getting in good with me will help them. They're all trying to ingratiate themselves with me. So nobody's going to complain when I walk in their dressing room and they're changing. So not only did he do that, but Donald Trump is so dumb, he bragged about it to Howard Stern on the Howard Stern show. So it shouldn't come as any surprise to anybody when the 16-year-olds who were in the Miss Teen America pageant tell stories about Donald Trump walking in on them when they're changing and saying to them cavalierly, "Oh, don't worry, I've seen it all before." Disgraceful. Another form of establishing a base of power and then abusing it is getting yourself a trophy wife and then treating her with complete disrespect. It's hard to even imagine how mortifying it would be for Melania to listen to these allegations, knowing that she was his wife at the time. And I might add that I think Ivanka realized early on that Trump not only wanted a trophy wife, he needed a trophy daughter also. And there are any number of websites online that will show you before and after pictures of Ivanka in which they allege, shall we say, certain medical transformations that occurred over time. I will post one in the description box. While I'm on the subject of Ivanka, I think one of the ways we've gotten it completely wrong is all these great commendations given to the Trump kids. Oh, look at the kids, they're so wonderful. What I've found about the kids is that the apple hasn't fallen very far from the tree at all. For example, all the while that Trump was stiffing subcontractors, the person who was there offering sort of a smiling face and a window dressing for this predatory behavior was Ivanka. Every time Trump stiffed somebody, Ivanka was right there at his side, explaining why it was appropriate to stiff and potentially put some of these vendors out of business. And how about Donald Jr.? Let's take a look at some of the statements that Donald Jr. has made. Here is Donald Jr. when asked about the problem of sexual harassment of women in the workplace. This was in 2013, and I quote, "If you can't handle some of the basic stuff that's become a problem in the workforce today, then you don't belong in the workforce. You should go maybe teach kindergarten," apparently suggesting that kindergarten teachers don't count in the workforce. "You can't be negotiating billion-dollar deals if you can't handle that, And he later jokes that, maybe if he were a woman, sexual harassment would be my get-rich-quick scheme. I'm now suing you guys because I feel uncomfortable." That's Donald Jr.'s take on sexual harassment. Good stuff, huh? Sounds exactly like Donald Sr. And finally, let me just say a few words about the ultimate predatory scheme, Trump University. It doesn't get much worse than Trump University. One of the things that's gotten lost about Trump University is that when Donald launched it, he claimed that this was his way of giving back. Donald actually promised that the proceeds from Trump University were going to go to charity. That was before he pocketed $5 million and before people started complaining about the fraudulent nature of Trump University. Now, we all remember his incredibly abusive conduct toward Judge Curio. But the reason that Trump adopted a scorched earth policy toward Curio was that he was so fearful of the release of the Trump instructional manual for the salespeople for Trump University. He didn't want that to come out. Actually, the contents of it, there have been so many allegations since then that it's gotten lost. So let me just read you a couple things that the instruction manual from Trump University tells people. Now remember that Trump University was essentially a bait and switch. It was get people into a seminar, and once they're there, tell them that the real information that will make them successful will come only when you sign up for the elite program, which costs $35,000. Unbelievable. So the goal for salesmen was to make people feel small, insignificant, unsuccessful, bully them. And if they resist the sales pitch, use lines like this. Mr. Trump will not listen to excuses, and neither will we. You've had your entire adult life to accomplish your financial goals, and you're not even close to where you need to be. Now, it goes without saying that a lot of the people who attend these seminars are in dire financial straits. That's why they're there in the first place. They've had enormous financial difficulties. So one of the problems for the Trump fraud, the Trump ripoff, was that often these people didn't even have viable credit cards. They had had to cut up their credit cards already. So how do you get money out of them? How do you get blood out of a stone? Well, the instruction manual had a way to deal with that too. Let me read it. What most people do is handle their tuition by putting it on their credit cards, because it gives them the ability to make small monthly payments and maintain a low overhead to run their real estate project. Later on, they can use their success in real estate to pay off the banks in a couple months or so. Here's the kicker. However, you don't seem to have the advantage of having that kind of leveraging power. Do you have any other seed capital or savings set aside to further invest in your real estate projects? How sickening is that? How sickening is that? So small wonder that after a few months of Trump University, the complaints, the outrage, the lawsuits started pouring in. So this is a guy who throughout his life has always counted on being able to find a mark, a sucker. And that's how he's playing the American people right now. Now, happily, it looks like he's going to lose. And he may lose big. So it seems that sort of the laws of the universe have kicked in. Soon he will lose the election. The Trump University trial will be forthcoming in a few months. He's going to be taken to task for using his pretend charity, Trump charity, as a kind of slush fund for personal payments. A whole lot of things are going to happen for and to Donald Trump after the election. So it's going to be particularly gratifying when Trump realizes karma is a bitch. I'm Jeff Rowan. Thanks for watching.